Hello, hello, welcome. I am Lavender Williams. Thank you for joining us tonight with Aging and Depression. We're going to continue our monthly interviews, our monthly talks, discussions, open dialogue with the men who have been courageous enough to share their lives of living with depression. And tonight we have Mr. Robert Congress, who is backstage. Errol Tolbert was supposed to join us also. However, he had online counseling tonight with his therapist. It was a scheduling conflict. So by all means, I told him to take care of himself. So that is where he is. We will miss him tonight. However, we're going to bring in Mr. Congress and allow him to introduce himself. Hello there, Mr. Congress. How are you?
Doing great. How are you, Lavender?
Great, 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 great. Thank you again for sharing yourself with us tonight, Robert. Before you introduce yourself, I need to acknowledge my sponsor right quick, Attorney Robert Allen, and we're going to get right into our discussion of aging with depression.
Injured in a motor vehicle accident? Call Robert C. Allen, an experienced lawyer prepared to confront insurance companies and negligent drivers. Attorney Allen brings 30-plus years of strong representation to obtain the settlement you deserve. Call Robert C. Allen at 850-438-6800 for a free consultation. That's 850-438-6800 or visit www.robertcallen.com. Watch the Ask Robert C. Allen show on WBQP-TV Pensacola Speaks on Blab TV and follow him on all social media platforms.
Great. Okay, Robert, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm wonderful. Why don't you begin by introducing yourself? Tell our viewers, as everyone is checking in, first of all, you all please share. If you know someone who is dealing with depression, who might be dealing with depression, you just may not be sure, please share this video. We will continue to share them. You can catch them on YouTube on the Other Woman Magazine YouTube channel and Facebook page, but please share. Okay, Robert, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Robert L. Congress, aka Big Lee, as I was known when I was a kid growing up. I'm a native of Alabama. I'm a proud retired Navy veteran. I'm currently a first-time author, freelance writer, and I'm a regular contributing writer for the Other Woman magazine. And I also am a mentor for young men and troubled teens.
And I think you being a advocate for mental health awareness and depression is a great addition to the whole mentorship. If we can catch these young boys and notice those signs and be aware of those signs while they're young, it's would benefit them, I believe, before they got older, which brings us to our discussion on aging with depression. First of all, I've got a list of questions. I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I have some questions dealing with aging and depression that I'll ask you. But I want it to be known that depression is not a normal part of aging. It's something completely separate. But why do you, knowing how men are kind of shut mouth when it comes to their health, especially mental health, depression, why did you feel it necessary to come out, to be open, to be transparent about depression?
Well, I think I got to the point where I realized that I needed help. And the only way that I could get that help or get help was to expose myself to what I was dealing with, and it took me a while to do that. And I think the other part is me being who I am. You know, I'm the type of person that believes in helping people. So
Mhm.
uh, it became important to me that, you know, that through my story or my experience dealing with uh, mental health issues, depression, I thought that I could be of help to others, specifically men that may be dealing with some of the similar things that I was dealing with. And also my sibling, and I've mentioned this before, my brother, well, actually, my brother and two of my brothers. So my stepbrother and my other brother, Danny, uh, they both suffer from schizophrenia. So it's something that uh, mental health issues runs throughout my family. So,
Mhm.
so the bottom line was, you know, I wanted to come out and become an advocate for it, in the hopes of being able to help others.
Well, you're definitely doing your part. How long have you dealt with depression, or should I say, when did you realize or notice that you may have depression?
Well, I think the first time that I became aware of it was um, when I retired from the Navy. I went into coaching, uh, youth athletics, and then on into high school athletics, football specifically. And that's where I started mentoring young men. So I led a very active lifestyle after retiring from the Navy. And it got to the point where at the time I was working in the public school system, and I became overwhelmed. Uh, I felt like I was being pulled in many different directions. And long story short, approximately about I would say about between 4 or 5 years ago, uh, I suffered from what I would call a mental breakdown. It was
Mhm.
at that point I realized that something wasn't quite right.
Mhm. So as you age, do you mind sharing your age?
I don't. I'm a proud 60-year-old man.
Okay, still a young man.
Yeah, classify
So
myself as a young man.
yeah, so this is a good topic. So as you age and dealing with that depression, it's a list of questions here. They have answers, but I want to hear your answers. Um, how do you deal with aging and depression? Dealing with aging is one thing, but dealing with aging and depression is something else. How are you dealing with it, or have you thought about as you age, how do you prepare to deal with that?
Um, I'm not quite sure how to answer that question, but what I'll say is that, you know, I refer to what I'm dealing with, you know, as part of my peaks and valleys.
Okay.
So each day for me, uh, it's a challenge, to be quite honest with you. There are days when um, I'm not sure if I want to face the world, to be quite honest with you. There are days when I don't feel like getting out of bed. And as I stated previously, you know, I've always been a very active person. The people that truly know me, uh, they know that. And I've always considered myself a bit of a, I guess you could say, a social introvert, but you know, I've gone much further down that rabbit hole, if you will, in terms of, you know, when I first realized that I was dealing with depression. But to answer the question, I just it's a challenge every day. You know, I
Hmm.
wake up. and I have to kind of have somewhat of a plan of what I'm going to do. But then sometimes that doesn't work out. I can plan
Mm,
certain things, but when you're dealing with uh, depression, sometimes you know you can decide that you're going to do a certain thing, but depression has a way of kind of just pushing those things down. It's almost like I've heard the term. I heard people say it's almost like being in a fog.
mm,
That's what it's like sometimes. So sometimes I have to force myself to do certain things. I have a little job that I do on the weekends, and I have to mask what's really going on the inside. And some days it's not as difficult as others, but pretty much uh, uh, I deal with it on a daily basis. And again, I refer to it as just peaks and valleys.
mhm. Why don't we talk about some of the signs and symptoms of depression in older adults? And this is all coming from helpguide.org and Forbes.com. What are the signs and symptoms of depression in older adults? And through my own research, they sound like the signs and symptoms of depression, period, not just older adults, but I'm going to read, it's 5 or 6 of them. Sadness or feelings of despair, unexplained or aggravated aches and pains, loss of interest in socializing or hobbies, weight loss or loss of appetite, feelings of hopelessness or helplessness, and a lack of motivation and energy. So I think most of those, besides uh, most of them are symptoms of depression, not just necessarily in older adults. Have you experienced any or all of these symptoms?
I would say honestly that I've experienced most, if not all of those symptoms. Yeah, every last single one of them, and it's something that again, some days are better than others.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yes, I would say yeah, it's a fact that I've dealt with all of those.
This here, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, this here, depression and aging, these are some other common symptoms from another source. Grumpy or irritated, inconsistent sleeping patterns, confusion, lack of attention, lack of interest in activities, and inconsistent eating patterns. So these are some of the common symptoms of depression and aging. So if we have parents or older family members or friends, it's good to recognize some of those symptoms to try to get them help. I am not any kind of what do you call it? A person who can give advice or suggestions. Robert, do you feel like if someone came to you and shared with you that they were dealing with some depression symptoms, that you would be able, or you're in a position to offer help or advice?
I think at this point, yes, and also, it would be beneficial to me as well. Um, Anytime I can share my story related to what I'm dealing with in terms of depression that I deal with daily, uh, and have that reciprocated toward to me, somebody who may be dealing with some of the same thing, it will be beneficial for both, and it would definitely help. And yeah, I would absolutely be more than open, and I'm confident in the fact that I wouldn't have a problem with sharing my story, and hopefully by sharing my story and some of the things that I deal with, that I can help others. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, and 988, that's the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. They do have a 1-800 number, but they've made it even easier to just dial 988. So if you or someone you know is in emotional distress or suicidal crisis, there's a 1-800 number, 1-800-273-TALK, or you can easily dial 988. Okay, can depression make you look older? Here's the answer. Depression, like anger, sadness, weighs heavily on the face and can cause wrinkles from repetitively frowning and how do you pronounce that word? Furrow, furrowing brows, eyebrows. So depression can make you look older. How do you deal with aging depression? Here are some of the examples that they gave. You gave yours. I'm going to share 10 ways to help seniors deal with isolation and depression. And you just chime in on them as I share. Treat sleeping problems, promote a sense of purpose, encourage social interaction. And social interaction is one of the top things to help with the aging process, not just depression, interacting and being sociable. Keep them physically active, make sure they eat healthy, entrust them with a chore, show them that they're loved, and seek professional help. And for those who are just tuning in, Errol Tolbert was supposed to be with us, but that seek professional help reminded me to let you all know that he couldn't be with us because he had a previously scheduled online counseling session with his therapist. So he does get help, therapy, and he did give me permission to share that. So some of those are good ways to help people in our life who are seniors that deal with depression, or if you're listening and you're a senior, those are some helpful ways to deal with isolation and depression. Okay, here's a question. Why do we get sadder as we get older? The answer is, as young adults look forward to their future, older adults tend to reflect and have negative feelings toward how their life has progressed. Can you relate to that?
Well, I would say, as someone who's always led an active lifestyle, and who's always been involved with activities involving youth, specifically with me, being a high school football coach. I spent a lot of time with a lot of young men, specifically in the weight room, trying to teach them the proper way to train and to lift weights, certain techniques. So a part of that, you have to actually get in there with them and actually show them how to do certain things. So as I aged, and then again, 4 or 5 years ago, I realized that I was dealing with mental health issues, depression specifically. Those two things came together. My inability to physically do some of the things that I've been accustomed to doing, been able to do, up until a certain point in my life, coupled with depression, putting those two things together, it mentally impacted me. And it made me question my value. And most men know this, we're physical beings. And when we get to a point where we feel like, we start to ache, and I recall having a conversation with one of my Navy buddies, and we were talking about old times, and how we would play certain sports, and I've gotten to the place where I talked about playing contact football, and going from contact football to as you get older, a lot of men can relate to this, playing flag football. I played baseball at one point, and so I had to go from baseball to playing softball. So you go through natural changes as you get older. And then when you couple that with depression has a way of just making you just not want to do anything. So it was like a double whammy for me. Not being able to pick myself up off the mat and do a lot of the things that I had previously been able to do. And adding in the aging aspect of it, people that are older, that get older, they realize, it's not as easy to get out of bed. That's a natural thing, and I kind of joke about that with certain people. And I think even you and I have talked about that, Lavinda, how, I've talked about how sometimes, I'll slither out of bed now. And that's not necessarily something that relates to depression. But when you couple that with depression, again, it makes you, question your value.
I don't think most people who've never dealt with depression or lived with someone with depression understand the depths of how depression can impact a person's day. A simple task can be so difficult for someone who deals with depression to complete. And as you get older, you already don't feel like doing a lot. And top that with depression on an aging person, it's got to feel like almost like a crippling effect on the body, on the mind. The whole part about the socialization, what's the most, you talked about how active you used to be. What's the most active thing you've done recently in regards to sports or anything, exercise? You mentioned the weight room.
If I'm being honest, leaving the house and getting in the car. If I'm being honest, that's how crippling it can be. My mind will say, hey, go out and take a walk, or, go and, go to one of the local facilities and try working out. But the mind says one thing, but then the depression, takes over in the mind, and it pretty much prevents you from doing. So for me, the motivation is there, but a lot of times, and also being a writer, there are days, I have days where I have, my peaks when I want to sit and I'll write. And then there are days that I'll sit in front of my, this is another thing. As a writer, writers write, and that's something Ms. Lavinda talks about all the time, but it becomes difficult when you're dealing with the valleys relating to depression, and in my case, being a writer. There are days where, I'll get going and, I'll write thousands of words, but then there are days I'll sit in front of my notebook and I'll just sit there, and it's like being stuck. So the toughest thing for me really is getting up in the morning and leaving the house and getting in my car. I know that sounds like a very simple task, but sometimes it leads to anxiety for me. There are days when I'm okay, but then there's days when I'm not, and again, the whole writing thing, and that's my passion. I like writing, but it becomes difficult. So, yeah, those two things in particular.
Talk about the anxiety part. You said it leads to anxiety. Can you talk more about that? What exactly are you feeling when you say it leads to anxiety?
Well, I've always considered myself to be a social introvert. I know how to step into a bright light. Uh, you know, previously, I've done a lot of mentoring. I've been done a lot of stuff up front where I've had to engage audience of people, and in the past, it hasn't been an issue for me because I'm dealing with depression the way I am now. Uh, the thought or ideal of having uh, to leave the house, get in my car, and go out and deal with people, it brings on, and that's where the anxiety comes from because, people may see me a certain way, but in my mind, the depression is telling me, uh, you're not, you know, you're not that same person you used to be. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, so you question your confidence. Uh, and some people may not. There are days when I can hide it fairly well,
Mm-hmm.
but some
What
people
about good days? Do you have just really good days?
I do have really good days, but the good days now uh, are contained within the depression, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So I'm having to still deal with it, but there are good days, and a good day to me may be as simple as uh, having a conversation with someone, whereas uh, typically, I would do everything when I'm out in public, I would do things to avoid people. So a
Mm-hmm.
good day is when I can break that boundary and to be able to, I guess, I don't know, if convert back to who I was before I started dealing with depression and talk to people and very social. And I do have those days, but I don't know when those days are going to come. When it happens, I take advantage of it. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Robert. Here's a question. Why is my mental health getting worse as I get older? And the answer is as we age, our body's repair mechanisms decline, contributing to multi system impairment and diseases that are more common in late life, such as cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and brain disease, such as dementia. Um, why am I looking old all of a sudden? The answer is exposure to light is a top cause of premature aging. Sun exposure causes many skin problems. Ultraviolet light and exposure to sunlight age your skin more quickly than it would age naturally. The result is called photoaging, and it's responsible for 90% of visible changes to your skin. I don't know if that had anything to do with depression or not. Um, does depression affect physical appearance? People with depression may experience appetite changes, which can cause unintended weight loss or gain. Medical experts have associated excessive weight gain with many health issues, including diabetes and heart disease. Being underweight can harm the heart, affect fertility, and cause fatigue. That's interesting to know. Let's see. As you age, Robert, you mentioned writing. Now, writing is a career that you can pretty much age into. You are the author of the book Sidelined. how long and how difficult was it for you to deal with your depression and meet deadlines? That must have been a huge, what's the word? A great thing that a huge accomplishment for you. Just listening to you speak and how difficult it is to sometimes get out of bed. So I think about the days that you work and how difficult you said, you mask it. Some days are more difficult than others, but to write a book. So I'm thinking for those who are listening, whatever the task at hand is, and as we age, it'll get more difficult. Talk about the challenges you dealt with as a writer to complete that book. And do you have a copy of the book with you?
I do.
Okay.
So, as she stated, I'm a co-author of this book, Sideline, with Maurice Smiley Harris. Something I'm proud of that I was able to get through this. This was good therapy for me. But to answer your question, when I write and I'm dealing with bouts of depression, and again, some days are better than others. I have to in my head. I tend to convert back to when I'm having a difficult time putting pen to paper or transcribing words. I have to, in my mind, I convert back to my time. I paint a mental picture sometimes in my head when I was in the Navy, and the amount of work for anybody who's prior Navy. I'm an Airedale, spent a lot of time on the flight deck, days are long. So we had to you had to stay upbeat, keep yourself motivated, and determined when you're working, in this case for me, on the flight deck. I also think about my time as a high school football coach, and in order for me to motivate the young men that I had to motivate to meet a certain end, I had to be motivated. So I kind of play this role in my head that, hey, the things that I used to do to push people and to push myself, I kind of put myself in that space mentally in my head when I'm having difficulty writing. And basically, I just have to just press through it. And those are a couple of techniques that work for me. I kind of paint this mental picture in my head that, hey, Robert, regardless how much it hurts mentally or, it's still got to get done. So that's how I'm able to get through a lot of it. Some days it works, and some days it doesn't. It doesn't. So, but those are a couple of my methods for getting through it. And sometimes just talking to, I've had plenty of conversations, full disclosure, me and Miss Lavender, and I've shared this before. We've known each other for pretty much about 40 years. And sometimes, I'll even talk to her to offer her being a writer as well. She's good at helping to motivate me when I'm dealing with serious bouts of depression. So those are some of the methods that I use.
And I guess everybody has their own way of navigating through their depression. Depression often brings on other mental health issues, just like aging brings on other issues. But just because we age doesn't mean that we have to get old. But when it comes to depression, those symptoms, I guess they, especially when they talked about with the aches and the pains, I guess that is just a part of, it's a common symptom. It said, where is it? Inconsistent sleeping patterns. and inconsistent eating patterns, lack of attention. The grumpy or irritated thing had me thinking about Grumpy Old Men. Remember that movie, Grumpy Old Men?
Good movie.
Now,
Classic.
do you ever see yourself as a grumpy old man?
Honestly, no, I don't. That's one of the things I said earlier that I deal with most of those symptoms, but that's one of them that I think we're all grumpy at some point, depression or not.
Yeah.
But no, I don't see that as something major for me in terms of me dealing with my depression.
What do you see as one of the main things, or is there one thing that maybe concerns you more than others as you age with depression?
Um, I would say because I'm passionate about people
Mhm.
and helping others, I tend to put other people ahead of myself, and a lot of times I get inside my own head. Um, we all deal with things in our lives, and things that are very personal. For me, when the thing that I probably deal with the most is sleeping.
Mm.
So I wrestle with being able to, at times, being able to take a good night's rest because I'm always thinking about others and those that are closest to me. And so you take that again and you couple that with depression. It becomes a challenge to be able to sleep on a consistent basis, sleep regularly. So, I'm of the belief that sleep is just as important as going to the gym or maintaining an active lifestyle. Sleep is a part of it.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
uh, when I'm in that place where I'm not able to sleep comfortably, it tends to zap my energy. And when I get to that place, it basically causes me to shut myself off from everything.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, so I would say sleeping is probably the biggest one for me.
And when it comes to aging, I don't know if I saw this, read this, but sleeping or the lack of sleep is a cause for memory loss. And it was, I believe, sleeping was the one thing that could help maintain good memory. I guess after a full day of conversations, meetings, thinking, appointments, whatever, the brain is filled, and sleeping is the only thing that can remove. So you feel refreshed after a nap, you feel refreshed after a good night's sleep. So I can see if you don't get enough sleep that fogginess can occur. And if you are dealing with depression, it's got to be difficult. But so what do you do to help you sleep? Do you do anything to promote a good night of sleep or?
Um, I'm still right now, if I'm being honest, I'm still just trying to figure it all out. When
Mhm.
it comes to being able to get a good night's rest. There are certain techniques that I do use, and sometimes they work, and then other times they don't. And that's one of them is meditation. Uh, yeah, I tend to listen to vocal meditation, and
Mhm.
it tends to work for me. Um,
Mhm.
but outside of that, when it's time, there are times when when I have lapses in my sleep where my body just automatically says, you know what, you're going to sleep, and I'll go to sleep.
Yeah.
But in
Yeah.
terms of being able to do it just on a consistent basis, it's a challenge.
Mhm.
And I'm not the type of person who likes to medicate myself, put a bunch of pills in my body, because as far as I'm concerned, that it tends, not always, but it tends to cause other issues. So I'm still just trying to figure that one out.
Right. For those of you who are watching, again, if you know someone dealing with depression or are showing signs of depression, please share this live. I want to talk about another one. These are questions that I found online, and they have answers to them. What will happen if depression is not treated? Now, we know in our culture specifically that we will go a lifetime without going to the doctor, not necessarily just for depression, but for anything. But specifically for mental health, that's like taboo in the African American community. But for men, also, I guess mental health is a shot to the ego. So this one is what will happen if depression is not treated. And it says untreated depression increases the chance of risky behaviors such as drug or alcohol addiction. It also can ruin relationships, cause problems at work, and make it difficult to overcome serious illnesses. Clinical depression, also known as major depression, is an illness that involves the body, mood, and thoughts. So again, if you know anyone that might be dealing with some emotional distress, maybe they just don't want to talk about it, there's a number there. And you can also, I guess it would be okay, Robert, even if it wasn't us, for someone to be able to dial 988 to ask for help. What do you think?
Absolutely. I would encourage it. I'm thinking about a conversation that I had with when I posted this event and went live, reminding people about this event tonight. I had someone, a close family member, I won't say who, reach out to me and basically shared some things with me about what they deal with, and I never knew that they were dealing with depression, and sometimes you just people need others to come out in order for them to be able to come out and share their story. So I would say, absolutely dialing 988 would be something that I would absolutely could do now. But in the past, you mentioned the whole ego thing. I would never have considered doing that. And I absolutely wouldn't have never have thought about sharing anything with anybody. But I'm at that place now where, it's important that I do whatever is necessary. But yeah, through my sharing of lately, there are not only this one example of a family member sharing some things with them. I got other examples, but I obviously am not going to expose those people because it's private stuff. So, but through me sharing some of my experiences with depression, has led to others being able to open up and talk to me. So it's a good thing.
Yes, it is. And I thank you again. You've used the term before that you came out, and that is so important, to have a network of people to be brave enough, courageous enough, or just get to that point in life where they just don't want to deal with it alone, that they will openly share. And that's anything, not just depression. Sometimes it takes to be open, to come out and be transparent for others to feel like they are not alone. But I believe there are more men than we ever imagined who deal with depression and mask it than not. So the whole ego thing, this is just important for men to know, especially as they age, because loneliness sets in, feelings of helplessness and hopelessness sets in as we age. Those are the natural things. But to deal with depression, I can't imagine someone being alone, not
Yeah.
having support, and dealing with depression.
Yeah.
Go
If you don't
ahead.
mind me, can I share this? Because I've always been active in terms of my involvement with youth, community involvement. Um, I find myself in a place now where, because I'm more isolated now, I have to deal with people who don't understand what I'm dealing with, basically deciding that they've decided that uh, they don't want to have a relationship with me anymore. So as you age, you mentioned, people that age, uh, and this is for the young people out there. One day you're going to wake up and you're going to start aging. You're not going to be able to do. You can't live and be young forever. I thought I could, but my point is this. When you're dealing with depression and you're aging, people tend, because people don't understand, and I don't fault people for not understanding. It's just what it is. Uh, People will tend uh, to basically decide that that relationship for them is not worth it. I hate to say it that way, but it's just the reality of it. I don't do a lot of communicate by way of phone. I don't talk to a lot of people um, like I used to. I'm not as engaging, and it's not because I don't want to be those things. It is what it is, and a lot of times, when that happens, it causes you to uh, lose a lot of relationships. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
fault anybody, because people don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Because people would look at me now, and people would, like me right now being on live. There are probably people that will probably eventually see this when we re-air it. They may
Where's
say,
he been?
"Where has he been?" It's just like Waldo. It's like I'm like a unicorn now. I don't choose to be that way, but this is my life. This is
Mm.
who I am right now. So just understand that, if you're dealing with depression and you decide to come out of the closet, there's probably going to be uh, you're going to probably end up losing some of the people that you consider to be quote unquote friends.
Mm.
And it's one of those things. And as you age, it makes it more difficult to be more accepting of that. But you know, I'm learning to accept that, because it's nobody's fault, and I don't blame anybody, and I'm not looking for a pity party. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's a part of my life, and I accept that. Yeah,
And you say that a lot. You say that a lot, that you're not looking for a pity party. So we want to make it known that this isn't about men being weak. Depression is an illness. It's an illness. But I think it's natural for those who don't understand to feel sorry
yeah,
for those, because no one can really help you. We can do some of the suggestions that I read about, but it's an illness. It's like helping someone with cancer. You can't help them. You can offer some comfort or maybe even comforting words, which probably wouldn't help. But with depression, I don't know, if you had not shared your depression with me, I would be in the dark about it. I would be one of those people who didn't understand it and think, okay, well, what's wrong with them? Something's got to be wrong with them. I think I would go there because it's not the way the behavior is different than the average person. You know what I'm saying? To be shut out, closed off, alone from society, you would have to think, okay, something is wrong. So then you'll start to pry. But when the person completely isolates themselves, if you're not aware of symptoms of depression, yeah, your feelings may get hurt. You know, like you said, you're going to lose some friends. But hey, they weren't friends from the beginning. When they find out that you have
Hello.
depression, huh?
I said hello. They weren't friends anyway.
They weren't friends anyway. Seemed like they would come back stronger as a friend if they found out, oh, okay, well, God, he's dealing with depression. I understand, give him the space. And I would just want to tell those being on the outside looking in, I don't deal with depression. I mean, since I've been doing these, I've had friends to come out and share that they have depression. Show a little grace, just show a little grace with them. You feel helpless. I do with my friends, helpless, but I try to remember to just ask, do you need anything? Can I help with anything? I mean, I'm not a natural comforter. I got some horrible bedside manners,
You're
but
rough around the edges.
I'm rough around the edges. That's a good way to put it. I'm rough around the edges. But if you can just ask or remember to ask, are you okay? Because everybody's got something. Everybody's dealing with their own shit. Everybody's dealing with something. Life is not easy. And to top it with depression, any kind of mental illness, especially when you can't talk about it or people don't understand, or you get judged for isolating yourself, or you get judged for not meeting appointments or not following through with something that you said you were going to do. You're going to find out who your friends are. But if you have friends, just try to remember to show a little grace. What would you say, Robert? We are got about 10 minutes. What would you say to someone who is dealing with a friend or a loved one who may be showing signs of depression but hasn't been diagnosed with depression, but they're showing all the signs? What would you share with that person who's dealing with the person who is showing the signs?
I would say don't do what I did and allow your ego to deny subtle changes that you may be experiencing. It may not be that you're dealing with any mental health issues, but on the other hand, what if you are? I would say that probably, I don't know this to be factual, but I would say a good percentage of people are probably dealing with, there's a term, people that are pre-diabetic. I would say there are a lot of people that are, that deal with mental health issues, if that makes sense, or pre-depression, or on the verge of having full-blown medical issues. So if you notice subtle changes in yourself, don't allow your ego to take over. And this is for men and women. Women have egos too. Don't allow your ego to dictate certain outcomes that could lead to worse situations. I was fortunate to be able to uh, befriend a couple of decent people and people that deal with depression, and through that, it's helped me that way. So communicating out loud to people is important. You can't stay in the closet with it. Miss Lavinda mentioned earlier that depression could lead to all kind of other ailments. So just understand that. But my suggestion would be to don't allow your ego to take over, and find someone that you can trust. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a family member. Uh,
Co-worker.
so it could be a coworker. It could be a total stranger. And I've had conversations with total strangers, and yeah. So you find someone. I think the first step is acknowledging that there's something going on that you're not accustomed to dealing with. And then once you realize you're dealing with something that may be subtle, but it's not typically something that you are familiar with, I would say the next step would be opening up and talking to someone that may be able to help guide you or direct you, or may even be dealing with some of the same issues.
This says depression is not a normal part of aging. It's not a sign of weakness or a character flaw. If you think you or a loved one might have depression, talk to a health care provider. So we don't want to assume anything. You want to get that person some help as soon as possible, because we continually said in this live that it can lead to other things, and depression, it goes deep. So after so many celebrities have taken their lives, there are so many others who are not celebrities that we'll never hear about, who think about suicide or who actually commit suicide. So it is discussions like this, Robert. I thank you again for being transparent, for being open. And those who are tuning in late, you can watch the replay later or tomorrow. We'll continue playing it. And you're looking for Errol Tober, who was supposed to be a guest tonight also. He had a scheduling conflict. He had a online therapy appointment, counseling appointment with his therapist. So, and he gave me permission to share that while he's not here. Some choose counseling, some will be self-diagnosed and deal with it day by day. The important thing is just to be there for them. Because like Robert said, you may be dealing with something and not even know it. There might be more people out there who deal with depression and we will never, ever know. Just like being pre-diabetic, you don't know until you go to the doctor. So you can't have good health without recognizing mental health. Mental health is a part of health. It's a major part of health. It deals with behavior, right? It deals with interaction and how we deal with not only ourselves, but society. So inform yourself, educate yourself on the signs and the symptoms. And before we go, I just want to go over those some of those symptoms right quick again. Depression and aging, these are just some common symptoms. Grumpy or irritated, inconsistent sleeping patterns, confusion, lack of attention, lack of interest in activities, inconsistent eating patterns. And I just shared this one. It's not a normal part of aging. It is not a sign of weakness or a character flaw. So just because we age doesn't mean we're going to become depressed. Although that helplessness and hopelessness comes with aging, it's not a diagnosis for depression. And please remember the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. That is such an easy number to remember. You or someone that you know that are dealing with some emotional issues that you can't handle or you don't know what to say or what to do, call 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-8255. That's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And we will continue to have these on the Other Woman magazine once a month. If you have a topic that you want these guys to discuss, or if you are dealing with depression and you would like to join them, the invitation is there. That's the purpose of this. Right, Robert?
Absolutely.
Yeah, is to help others to know that they're not alone and come out. Okay, so we are out of time. Any closing words? You got it.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention was I also, besides being an author and a freelance writer, I also have a blog. As you can see there on the screen, you can reach me if you want to talk about some of the things that relate to mental illness or mental awareness, depression. You can reach out to me by way of www.robertlcongress.com. You can email me there, and I will absolutely respond. I've written several articles for the Other Woman magazine relating to depression, and here in the near future, I'm going to be doing a few blogs on issues relating to depression. I just want to thank you, Miss Lavinda, and the Other Woman magazine for allowing me to come on your platform and share my story. And hopefully some of the things that I shared will be helpful to others. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for mentioning your website, because I completely forgot. Yes, robertlcongress.com. He is a freelance writer. He's a blogger. As he said, I'm just repeating what he just said. Maybe you don't feel comfortable making a comment. Maybe you don't feel comfortable coming out in public. You don't have to. You can simply go to the blog, click on the contact button, and reach out to Robert and share. That's a beginning. You may not feel comfortable dialing 988. You can go to robertlcongress.com. That's just the beginning. It's somebody to talk to, somebody to share, somebody for the first step. Okay? So we thank you again. The Other Woman magazine is published by Candy Publishing. It is published 3 times a year, and you can go to theotherwomanmagazine.com. So we thank you for joining us. We are out of here, and I thank again my sponsor, attorney Robert C. Allen. And as we close, you guys, just remember, we all deal with something. Thank you for joining us. We talked about aging and depression, and we'll be back next month with another topic. Okay, thank you, Robert.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Fake, be who you want to be, because what makes you unique is your identity. It's what makes up you and me. It's what makes up you and me. It's what makes up you and me. It's your identity. It's your identity. Yeah. It's what makes up you and me. It's what makes up you and me. It's your identity. It's your identity. It's what makes up you and me. It's what makes up you and me. It's what makes up you and me. It's your identity. It's your identity. It's what makes up you and me. It's what makes up you and me. It's what makes up you and me. It's your identity. It's your identity.